Hi guys, well, after a few delays, The Crew 2 has finally been released on PS4, Xbox One, and PC. Once again, the game is set at a massive open world, recreating the entire United States of America. But this time, the vehicle roster is being expanded to include boats and planes as well as cars. We've been playing through the full game and are ready to give our impressions. Joining me for this team chat is Kevin.
Hi guys.
And James.
Howdy, folks.
I guess with the first game, when it first came out, I wasn't too keen on it, I must admit. But I think with the various patches and updates that came out, I really did actually warm to it. So I didn't quite know what to expect with The Crew 2. But I have to say, it is tonally a very, very different game. You could almost mistake it, I'd say, almost like a reboot rather than a sequel in some ways. So obviously the last game, it was centered on this sort of Fast and Furious style, cheesy revenge storyline.
It was very serious, wasn't it?
Very, very serious, yeah. And I think for The Crew 2, they've really made a very conscious effort to make it more light-hearted. So
yeah, it's almost like an extension of like what we saw with the Wild Rush.
Pretty much, yeah.
Calling all cops, except there's no cops in this one. But
sadly, yes. That's one of the many omissions of this game.
We'll get to that in a moment, no doubt.
But I think the tone does fit the style of game more. I think it was a bit too serious last time. So it centers on, they call it the Motor Nation. It's a sort of nationwide racing festival. Bit like Forza Horizon. Is it trying too hard, do we think, to be like Forza Horizon?
A little bit. It seems to be like trying to take the Horizon festival element from the Horizon games, but also that really cheesy, corny television show aspect from Test Drive Unlimited 2. It's this weird hybrid of the two, which it works as a more light-hearted center of the game for the game to revolve around. But it really just feels just like an excuse to have all these events going on in the American setting, rather than anything a bit more anything deeper or more extensive than that.
Yeah, so it's a very loose kind of setup, isn't it? I have to say though, my God, are the characters irritating?
Yeah, the voice acting isn't really. Well, it's hard to address. In that the voice acting, you're clearly not supposed to empathise with the characters. They're clearly there just to guide you through the event, to give you a jumping off point to them.
I can't remember a single character's name.
Yeah.
That's not a good sign, is it?
Some of the voices are very robotic, aren't they? They lack character, and it just, I don't know. It's not even as bad as being cheesy sometimes. Sometimes it's just really poorly delivered, and it just doesn't have that energy, to actually be cheesy. It's below that in some cases. So certainly does need a bit of work there. I didn't think that. I don't know, to release a product such as this with the lack of talent in the voice acting is a bit jarring, isn't it, for a game with such a large budget?
Yeah, exactly. With such, Ubisoft is a big publisher. This is obviously a very big budget game. It's been in the making for 4 years. Considering this is the sort of the central focus of the game, I think they could have done a lot better in that regard. I mean, some of the dialogue is dreadful, frankly. I've got a quote actually from one of the opening cutscenes.
Yes, go for it.
Yeah, this is an actual line from the game. Okay, I believe it's in the opening cutscene. The racing organizer goes, "I don't want your best. I want legendary badass."
Badassdom. Yes, I remember that. That was hilarious.
Forgot about that. Oh my God. Yeah, I agree with you. Everything on the voice acting is absolutely dire.
Yeah, I mean, that was at the very start of the game, which really sets the whole tone, doesn't it? It's like it's trying too hard to appeal to millennials, isn't it? That's we should mention actually the whole focus of the game is about getting social media followers, because that's how the world works now, apparently. Literally, the whole game is about getting social media followers, and that is what gates the progression. And that really does set a very different tone to the game. It reminds me a lot actually of Watch Dogs 1 to Watch Dogs 2, which coincidentally is also a Ubisoft published title.
Yeah.
So it seems to be a bit of a theme with Ubisoft games at the moment. I can see this becoming a running trend in future Ubisoft titles. But so yeah, that's really the main difference that we noticed first with The Crew 2. But obviously, I think one thing that did surprise us when the game was announced was that it's set in the same map as the first game. It's still set in the United States of America. Now, in the first game, obviously, it was very impressive when you first play it. No other game has been so ambitious as to try and recreate the whole of the United States. And obviously, it wasn't to an exact scale, but it was hard not to be
or exact shape either, because if you look at Florida, it's slightly squashed, isn't it? And it looks a bit odd, but it's fantastic that they had this vision. And I think it took about 7 years to actually develop the Crew, original Crew. So massive undertaking, like you say. To have the confidence to actually try and create something as big as this was fantastic, and that in itself was the big draw, wasn't it, for the Crew 1?
That's my problem though, because with the sequel, we've kind of been here before. It doesn't have the same wow factor to me, because it is by and large the same map. I know they've expanded it to incorporate the different disciplines, but on the whole, it's not that much different at all.
I mean, look at sort of Forza Horizon 4. Even that, is disappointing some players. And it doesn't seem to be much different, even though the environment is completely different. We have completely different seasons and such. Even then, people are not massively convinced. So the fact that the Crew 2 has exactly the same map, albeit sort of revamped to work around this new style of gameplay with the planes and the boats, it's a bit of a tough sell, isn't it, for some people?
That's it. I have to say though, graphically, very impressive on the whole. I mean, yes, there are some flat textures here and there. It's not the best looking game in the genre, but considering the scale of the map, it is an outstanding technical achievement. I will praise it for that. I think compared to the first game, it is a big step up. The lighting looks a lot more realistic now. I think some of the vehicle models have been improved. And also, actually, the water effects surprised me. Considering this isn't a dedicated boat racing game.
Yeah.
I
would say that graphically impressive when you're on the road, I would say. When you take to the air, you start to see a lot of holes opening up. I mean, it's understandable because they're trying to obviously keep the frame rate up in light of all the buildings and such that you see from the air. It's going to be tough. I was expecting some uglies, but I didn't quite expect to see so many when you take to the air. It is a little bit jarring at times, I'd say. But I do like...
On the standard Xbox One, correct?
On the standard Xbox One, I must say, yeah.
I mean, I've been playing it on the more powerful Xbox One X, and I think it is a little bit less noticeable.
Yeah.
Generally. There's slightly less texture pop in. I think the draw distance is also slightly better, but for some of the comparison videos I've seen, the general fidelity is pretty much the same on all consoles from what I've seen. I don't know if you guys have seen any format comparisons at all.
No, I've only tried it on the Xbox, sadly. So I haven't got any other platform reference for it. So what I can say is that when you're on the ground, a lot of these issues don't tend to be as prominent.
No.
When you're going really slowly in the really built-up cities where the lack of detail on the lack of environmental assets really start showing. It's fine when you're doing the street races because everything's just going by so quickly that you haven't really got time to focus on them. But so when you're just cruising about, say like Detroit or Florida or New York, it does become a bit apparent that it feels a little bit bland and lifeless at times.
I was going to say, some of the building designs are a little bit copy-pasted, a bit bland sometimes, but again, you kind of expect these sorts of concessions when you consider it takes a whole hour to drive from coast to coast. The sense of scale is outstanding. I want to point out as well, I love the new live map feature where you can pause the game and zoom out, and it's all rendered in real time. It looks incredible. And you zoom
One of my standout features actually is you can zoom out a little bit, can't you, and see like the buildings and such, and you can actually move around to your leisure and actually make a waypoint if you see something interesting. Like if you're at Las Vegas, for example, and you see all these famous monuments, that looks nice. I want to have a closer look at that. Set a waypoint, and you just drive there or fly there. So it's very well done, isn't it? When you sort of zoom out enough so you can see several blocks at a time,
and it doesn't.
And you can see like aeroplanes. No, and you see like aeroplanes doing aerobatics in Las Vegas, and they're sort of, you see the trail of smoke behind them, and it's very impressive.
Definitely. In fact, do you know what game it reminds me of?
Which game?
Driver San Francisco.
Absolutely. I just shoehorn in that game in somewhere.
Yeah, I thought the same actually. Yeah.
It could actually be a kind of evolution of that tech, because obviously it is a Ubisoft. That was a Ubisoft game, and I think some of the developers that worked on Driver in Reflections, Ubisoft Reflections, also worked on The Crew too. So it could well be a kind of next iteration of that tech. It's very impressive. While we're on the subject of Driver San Francisco, there's another mechanic that reminds me of that fantastic game.
It's that vehicles. I can't remember what on earth they've decided to call it. Was it
Fav?
Is it Fav or Fave?
I don't know. Probably Fave. It's supposed to be a
whatever you
vehicle.
want it to be. What do we think about this feature?
Well, I mean, it reminds me a lot of the shift mechanic in Driver San Francisco, where you can shift between different vehicles. It's kind of like a natural progression of that. So here you can switch between a car, a boat, or a plane.
Only one of each, though, isn't it?
Only one of each.
Yeah, it's a shame.
You have to assign. You can assign your favorite vehicle to it.
Yeah.
It's a fun gimmick.
It is.
To me, it's not really fully utilized. I don't think in the game, at least not in the campaign.
There's only a few races that you actually have to use this, don't you, to win the race? So it's underutilized, like you say. Very
underutilized. I mean, it's fun at first when you're just messing around and free roaming, but I think eventually the novelty does wear off. And considering this is meant to be one of the game's main selling points, it's really underused. I was surprised actually how underused it was.
Yeah,
I think that would.
So isn't it only in the races where you do change vehicle classes on the fly? It's already pre-scripted for you. So
it's a scripted events, yeah.
So you can't just pick the vehicle you want to do. When it gets to water, it will change you into a boat regardless.
Yeah. Well, I don't think using a car in that scenario would work very well.
It's true. It gives you the freedom when you're just mucking about in the free roam bit.
Yeah, and that's the only time it does. Yeah, it's a shame, really, isn't it?
You could play the game and not know it's there in free roaming.
We'll explain why that co-companion keeps bringing it up. For me, at least, he keeps bringing up. So don't forget, you can swap into your favorite boat, or whatever the line is.
Yeah, so, you know what I mean. Like you could quite easily, if all you do is cruise around, you could quite easily play the whole game without ever switching. I mean, I've done that quite a bit. I've just stuck with cars for the most part. So I guess whilst we're still talking about this, actually, what do you think of the other vehicles, like the boats and the planes?
Yeah, I mean, I jumped straight into the aerobatics when I first got onto the Crew 2 proper. I did play the beta before when I'd actually done the off-roading, so I thought I'd try something different. It just seems like there's a lot of repetition. You do the same sort of stunts over and over. There's not a huge amount of stunts you can do.
No.
So you're more or less doing the same things over and over. It asks you to do certain tricks, you do that. And it just seems very repetitive, even very early on with that discipline.
I've found the same. I mean, bear in mind there's, about 10 events which are more or less the same in the aerobatic stunt challenges.
It's very slow starting, isn't it, in general, this game, I find.
I must say the planes are very easy to control as well.
Yeah.
It's kind of a good and a bad thing though in some ways, because it's obviously very accessible. They want to attract the mass market here, but it doesn't require that much skill to master.
It seems all the vehicles apart from the cars have been quite a bit dumbed down. Whether that's intentional because they've had to juggle the physics engine to suit so many different types of vehicles. It does appear that anything that hasn't got four wheels has come off a little bit. Has got the short end of the stick on it. The planes kind of aren't affected as much, in my opinion, in that you've got a whole sky to muck around in. So you've got sort of you got like pitch and roll and diving, and you can do all these different tricks, which gives it a bit more variety than the boat. But
I know what you mean. The boat races do get a bit boring after a while. because
Yeah, I
of
mean,
that.
there are several different types of boats, isn't there? So there are different disciplines and stuff. But for me, I find the weakest actually is the bike stuff.
Yeah,
They feel very rigid and stiff, and it looks very
Yeah.
comical. It looks like you can get away with the boats, you can get away with aeroplanes, but I think the bikes just look a little bit too rough for me.
No, I agree. I think they have. It's kind of a jack of all trades, master of none, isn't it?
Mm.
It's almost like Project
I guess we
Cars
kind
2
of
in some
expected it
ways.
though.
Yeah, that's the problem. You know what I mean? Like, it has a very impressive variety of vehicle types, much like Project Cars 2. But again, with that game, it was perhaps a little bit too ambitious for its own good. I mean, I probably would have preferred better car physics than the planes and boats, for example.
Yeah.
I will say though, actually, the car handling is a lot better if you actually go into the settings and turn off all the assists.
Yeah.
I don't know if you guys have done that.
For some reason, I can't find the assists anywhere in the in-game menu. Are they in the main menu before you load into the game?
No,
Okay.
so you have to go to your garage, and I think you go to performance, and then there's a setting at the bottom that lets you go into, I think they call it pro settings, and that lets you turn off all the assists, and you can really fine tune the settings quite well. Because I think
So that's really odd. It's like it's because the control settings in the options menu, they're relatively in depth in that you can adjust like the linearity and the sensitivity and the dead zones there.
Yeah.
So I'm really surprised they haven't put the like the pro assists in that menu as well. It just seems like that's a really bizarre design decision there.
Well, I think the thing is, it's rather than a setting that changes every vehicle, it's specific to each vehicle class. So you've got to change it for each different type of vehicle.
Okay, so it said that they don't transfer over to the other vehicles.
No. So, for example, street cars have a different setting to drift cars or whatever.
Yeah, that sounds very awkwardly done, doesn't it?
It's not the best system. I think that's the problem by default. The controls are just far too easy. If you, I don't know if you've tried any drift events, but
I have, yeah.
Oh dear,
not a great fan of that. Especially if you're using the chase cam, it does look ridiculous, ridiculously sort of arcade. Even so, for the Crew 2, it seems a little bit exaggerated, you know. But it looks better from the cockpit view, but from the chase cam, it's very odd.
The problem is though, with the assists on, it literally does the counter steering for you. Like, I was getting really confused as to why it just didn't feel natural. It was more of a hindrance than a help. But then when I turned it off, I felt I actually had a lot more control of the slide, and I actually quite enjoyed it. Because I must admit, I do quite enjoy drifting in games, but it still felt a little bit less nuanced than it did in Wild Run, which I can't get my head around. It felt more challenging.
I wasn't a fan of the drifting.
I didn't at first, but I think once I got the hang of it, I sort of preferred. I think to the setup help where you were sort of doing it head to head with another car, whereas from what I've played so far on the Crew 2, it's just empty locations, which doesn't help. Actually, that leads me on nicely to one of my main complaints actually about the Crew 2, which is sad to say. So we were talking earlier about the new map and the kind of familiarity. The big problem is, outside of the main events, I find there just isn't enough side activities to really engage you. Yeah. So the first game, on pretty much every street, there was some sort of side challenge, whether it was a speed challenge or a slalom challenge or something like that. But I find the Crew 2, in between events, I'm really sort of just driving aimlessly, just trying to find something to do.
And because of that, often you just go to the map, won't you, and fast travel to your next event. You know, your next event is very
the whole
much
point of the game. So in some ways, the map just feels wasted. I really hate saying that.
This is where Test Drive Unlimited got it so right, because it gave you accomplishments for actually exploring the roads. You know, every road you was on, you had a goal to go towards. You know, you get a percentage of exploration, and with every road, you know, you get marked what roads you've been on, what roads you haven't. So if you spot a little bit of road you haven't been on, you know, you drove there, and you actually drove on that little piece of road that stopped you from getting 99% completion or whatever. You know, so you had a reason to be on every single road in Test Drive Unlimited, and that's where I feel the Crew has sort of missed a trick.
The thing is that the original game did that to a degree. Like from what I remember, you had to actually drive to certain parts of the map to reveal it and to unlock events. So there was there was actually incentive to explore the map.
Yeah,
In the crew,
to fast travel, yeah, you had to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think too, some of the events you could only unlock them if you discovered them. So there was actually incentive to explore in the crew, but I find there's none whatsoever in the crew too. I spent the majority of my time just flicking through the menu, going to the next event.
Yeah, I agree. Sadly, unfortunately, yeah, like you say, it largely makes the map defunct, doesn't it? Because what's the point of having a huge map if you don't really need to explore it?
No, it's a really strange design decision, I find. Speak of the campaign events, that's another quite interesting difference actually. The tracks look, the tracks in the events are a lot more curated, if you know what I mean. Like,
yeah,
instead of just racing on a random stretch of road from point A to point B, they're actually custom built tracks. So you've got ramps to jump on, you've got you can go on rooftops, jump off car parks, all that kind of. They're trying to add a bit more spectacle, I think, to the races, which is good.
Having said that, though, there's no crowds or any sense of event, is there? So although, like you say, they're curated, they're putting rooftops and such to make these races as interesting as possible, and some of them are pretty good, but there's no real sense of event for all the event that it tries to sort of portray in the game. So it's odd, isn't it?
But I have to say that what really does ruin the races for me is the AI. Oh dear God, my PlayStation controller will probably be in bits next week if I play this game anymore. So the first game was, should we say, notorious for its rubber band AI?
Rubber banding, yeah. Oh goodness.
Oh, it's back with a vengeance in the crew too. Oh yes.
Yeah.
It's so you could play an entire event. You could race really cleanly, make no mistakes, use all the shortcuts, get a great lead, and then just before the finish line, about 4 opponents speed past you. I'm sorry, but there is just no place for this in a modern racing game.
Well, unfortunately, this is a game that's trying to appeal to the masses, and I think I'm a little bit worried about games like Test Drive Unlimited. Will we see the likes of them again? Because people want instant gratification nowadays, even in the racing genre. We're seeing it more and more. So, unfortunately, we're going to see rubber banding probably more and more. We're going to see more fast travel stuff and games that set up so you're instantly into the action. And that's why I love the Test Drive Unlimited games so much, because you were rewarded for exploring and taking your time, and you were started out in the very sort of crappy cars, if you like. And then when you're online, you see people driving past you in a Bugatti. You think, oh God, I wish I had that car. And it took you time and effort to save up for cars like that. But more and more in modern games like Horizon, they're giving you Ferrari after Ferrari, aren't they? So some of the design decisions, although they do baffle me still, I can understand why they've gone with them, because we're sort of living in this instant gratification world now.
It works as much as it helps you catch up. I don't mind that too much sometimes in the crew too, because sometimes it's a very long race. You don't want to spend 20 minutes and then just come last. It's the other way around when you're just coming towards the finish line and they blast past you. If I've driven well, I should be rewarded for that, not punished. I've had a lot of scenarios where I just can't progress because the AI keeps overtaking at the last second. Very, very frustrating.
Yeah, it's something I can imagine where you kind of have to learn the speed that the AI responds to your pace, and then change your pace accordingly, so you can kind of make the result less.
This is supposed to be an accessible, casual game. You shouldn't have to do that.
Yeah. Also, in its defense, I personally haven't found too many irritating instances of it. The only one that really wound me up was that jet boat race around Las Vegas. One in that flat bottom boat with a huge great big V8 engine in the back.
Yes.
And no matter what happened, no matter what tactics I tried to do, until it basically was like mashing down the nitrous button and done every shit I could possibly find. The AI would just speed past me and somehow take these turns so much faster than me, and I thought, what am I supposed to do? I can't do this.
I've had this problem in most races, to be honest.
It's ironic, isn't it? They put this feature in here to make racing more exciting, and it just backfires a lot, doesn't it? I mean, GT Sport even had rubber banding, which is just at times was just atrocious.
Yeah,
probably not as blatant as it is in the crew too, though. It is, I'd say it's horrendous. It needs to be fixed, but we shall see. Oh yes, what's the other trend I can't stand in video games at the moment as well? Microtransactions. They're back as well. If I bring that up.
Yeah.
Pray tell.
So the progression in the Crew 2 in terms of buying cars is a bit broken. Let's just say the prices are a bit inconsistent.
Yeah. A lot of the vehicles seem to be really expensive. It's like I think some of the motocross bikes are like 70,000, 80,000
Wow.
in-game dollars.
Well, this is the problem.
At least the ones that were that they offered in the HQ bit when you choose your first motocross bike was like I was quite taken aback. Like if that's how expensive the bikes are, I don't want to know what on earth the F1 car, the Alpha GP prototype car is going to be like. It's going to be incredibly exorbitant.
You know what's funny? The Red Bull F1 car is about 500,000 in-game credits less than a Lamborghini Aventador.
What?
A road car, yeah.
Oh wow.
Yeah, it's a bit unbalanced. There's two forms of currency in the Crew 2. Obviously, you've got the in-game, I think they call it bucks, and then there's also Ubisoft credits, which you can buy with real-world money. I'm sure you can guess which is cheaper.
Yeah.
So on average, most just street cars that I've seen cost probably about 300,000 in-game credits. Consequently, when you buy a new car, you've basically drained most of your funds. It really does kind of hinder your progression. And what I've played, you don't get very many free cars rewarded to you either.
Yeah, it's really only what you reach icon status or when you choose the first, when you do your first event in each of the 4 families that they call them.
At the start of the game, you get lots of free cars, but if you want to progress to some of the later classes, you have to buy a specific car usually. So it's quite. There's a lot of grinding, I think, is what I'm trying to say.
There is. I mean, I chose the MX-5 at the start because I do like that car, and I just found that I wasn't able to keep up with the AI. So those early races, I just couldn't win. So I had to sort of get the performance parts and upgrade my car accordingly. But I just feel there's quite a few inconsistencies and imbalances throughout the game, isn't there?
Yeah.
That's the point, actually. I really missed the upgradable specs you had in the Crew 1, where you could transform your car from a street car to a dirt car, all the way to a circuit racing car. That's completely gone now in the Crew 2.
Yeah. I can kind of see why they got rid of it for the Crew 2 in that it's a much more motorsports focused game, so the extra competition car disciplines actually have a purpose in the Crew 2 now. But also in that the Crew 2's campaign does seem to be it's a much more interested in giving you an idea of what these different classes are like. So there's a justification for having all these different vehicle types. Whereas in the original Crew, you could easily go through the entire game with only 5 or 6 cars modified in one in each of the different classes. So at least this time, the extra car list, the car list does actually have a use. You can pick and choose and try out the different types.
Yeah, that's true. It does encourage you to try different disciplines. Well, you're basically forced to if you want to actually progress and complete the main campaign. But it just wouldn't be so bad if the economy wasn't so unbalanced. That does bring me on very nicely actually to another sore subject.
There's quite a few of these, isn't there?
Right, yeah,
this is a general theme.
This is turning into a bit of a rant. It was not our intention, but it is just how we feel about the game at the moment. So the Crew 2 is being built as a very multiplayer-focused game, very online-focused, but it doesn't have any competitive multiplayer. Not yet, anyway. That's being added in December, but
yeah, it's a long way away, isn't it?
It was available at launch in the Crew 1, and without it, the online just feels very hollow. There's no way to actually race with other players unless you're in, obviously, a group of like-minded people. But even then, you can't just set up a custom race, this route to this route. The online is very, very lacking at the moment. I mean,
I think this game could be in trouble when Horizon 4 comes out.
Exactly, yeah. I mean, by the time PvP comes out, I think a lot of players, there's a danger that a lot of players will have flocked to Forza Horizon 4 at that point. Yeah, they're really going to have to bring out regular updates to keep people interested.
Yeah, I hear they've got like every 3 months they're going to have some sort of major update. So
Yeah,
they've got stuff in the works. And, you know, with the crew, there's always long-term plans, isn't there, with this game? So
yeah,
who knows?
I like the sound of the post-release content. I mean, obviously, the first game was completely transformed. It was kind of rescued, really, from its original state. But I don't know. I just think launching the game without online PvP was a huge mistake because there's just not much to do otherwise. Because you've got these other players roaming around the map, and there's literally no way to interact with them.
Yeah.
It's bizarre.
Well, it also perhaps doesn't help that because the map is so huge that the players who are in the same session as you, they're often quite a distance away from where you initially spawn into the map, into the game world.
That's
So
right. There's a total of I think it's 8 players in total in one session.
I mean, eight players was what Test Drive Unlimited 2 had. It had this 8-player bubble, so it's not exactly they're not exactly sort of moving it on, are they? The genre. So 8 is a very small number, isn't it? Sorry, James.
A map that size, yeah, definitely.
Yeah, it's weird. So it seems a lot of the game problems do stem from the fact the world is perhaps a bit too big for its own good. I mean, we can all agree it's a phenomenal achievement, and that the art team and the people who created the map definitely need to be given a pay rise for it. But it seems like in terms of navigating the game world, finding the right events that you want to do, meeting up with like-minded players to cruise about online, and it seems a lot of it is hindered by the fact there's just so much in-game real estate to cover, and it's a big wonder what's the point? It's just wasting so much time getting from point A to point B.
Definitely, there's just some very questionable design decisions I think in this game, unfortunately, which really do kind of make it really miss its potential. I think it really falls short of its potential. It's a shame because I was really looking forward to the Crew 2. It's probably one of my most anticipated games of the year. Even, you know, last year was so full of racing simulation.
Yeah, absolutely. Last year was the year of simulation titles, and this year is almost becoming the year of the arcade, isn't it? So
it really is actually. Yeah,
we put this game pretty high up on the pedestal, didn't we? Expecting a bit better, I say. I mean, I'm still fairly early on with the game. So far, it's very similar race after very similar race, regardless of the discipline I've chosen. I mean, does it get better? Does it get more interesting? Is there any different event types? Is there anything there to compel me to carry on?
Not really.
Not really, unless you're a completionist.
Okay, yeah, I mean, that's not good.
I like the extreme events that they kind of mix up a bit, where they actually have the vehicle switching, but they're too few and far between. It does get quite tough when you unlock the hypercar races because in these we're talking, I think, a minimum usually of about 20 minutes.
Wow.
This is probably more of what I wanted to see. You know, some events that actually take advantage of the scale of the map.
Yeah.
But again, they're just ruined by the atrocious AI. But there we go. Yeah, I'd have a bit of a bugbear of the AI in this game.
Going in its defense, I do find the Crew 2 becomes a lot more enjoyable when you don't do massive multi-hour sessions in it. When you just like pick it up, do a couple of races, put it back down again for a while, then go back to it at a later date. It seems to work better as a bite-sized experience game where you just
it shouldn't be like that though, should it? Really, it should be a game that you can really deep dive into, and a bit like a GTA, you can do whatever you want. It doesn't really seem to hold on to that appeal, does it, for very long?
No, not in my experience. I mean, I've been playing quite a few hours of this game, I have to say. It does become a bit of a grind after a while. But like you say, James, I think for more casual players, I think it is better played in small doses if you're just going to go through the campaign. So it does get a bit repetitive. I think if you play it online with a like-minded group of friends with some voice chat and just do road trips and things like that,
that's the beauty of these games. You make your own fun largely, don't you, with sandboxes and stuff. And you know, the same with Test Drive Unlimited, a fantastic game. You can just get on and cruise with your friends or whatever. And you know, it's one of those games that you sort of, the people who get the most out of this will create their own fun, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
I think content creators will like it as well, actually, because there is a very good photo mode, which I don't think was in the first game. It's very customizable.
Yeah.
And there's also a replay editor. So there's a lot of scope, I think, for people that just enjoy cruising with their friends, creating their own scenarios, and then sort of playing them back and making videos out of it. So I think there's a lot of potential for that. That just leaves your very dedicated hardcore players, though. It'll be interesting to see how populated it is in a few months' time, especially when Forza Horizon 4 comes out.
That's the real acid test, isn't it? Once Horizon 4's out with multiplayer, because Horizon multiplayer is pretty decent, isn't it? So it's really going to be up against it there. Where do we see this series going in the future, The Crew?
I'm not really sure. I think it will probably need another game in order for the series to find its identity. The fact The Crew 2 is such a massive lurch away from what the original game was perhaps doesn't help either. It feels more out of obligation that they've called it a Crew sequel rather than giving it its own completely new, make it a completely different game with a whole new identity behind it.
Yeah, it's a tough one, isn't it? They've gone in a completely different direction with The Crew 2, in terms of its tone. But I really don't know where they can go from here, to be honest, because I don't think it's done that well critically.
No, very mixed reviews I've seen so far. I mean, one thing's for sure, they've got to get out of USA if they're going to do a third game, haven't they? Because it's sort of it's going to outstay its welcome if it's involved in a third game. So I can understand why they've reused assets.
Yeah, I do think a different map would have made it feel a bit more fresh. It does feel very too familiar sometimes.
Recycled.
Yeah. So there we have it. I think that probably sums up our thoughts on The Crew 2. Does anyone have anything more to add on the game?
I think I'd probably like to stress that I'm personally finding it much more enjoyable than The Crew, and credit where credit's due. Ivory Tower has made a big improvement on The Crew 2 over the original game, so I like to get that in there first. At some moments when you do get that click moment with it, The Crew 2 does become what I find quite an enjoyable game. The issue is that those moments aren't really as consistent as I probably would have hoped they would have been, considering the scope and the potential of the overall package.
Yeah.
No, that's it. They're too fleeting, aren't they? Yeah, it is definitely an improvement over the original game in some aspects. I think graphically it's a step up. Driving physics is definitely an improvement. I mean, in the first game, all the cars handled terribly because you had to upgrade them using the RPG system, whereas now they're fun to drive right off the bat. It's just those really annoying design decisions that I think really let it down, unfortunately. Yeah, there's so much potential for them to build on what they already achieved in the original game, and just too many aspects for me fall flat, unfortunately. Like I said before, it's definitely designed to be played with like-minded people. I think that is where the experience will excel. If you're just cruising and enjoying your time with other friends and sort of taking in the environment. But as a solo experience, it is definitely lacking from what I've played, unfortunately. But there's still hope. I think in the future, the future updates and patches could salvage the game. There's lots of free content to look forward to, and of course we've also got the long-awaited PvP at the end of the year.
There's definitely one to keep an eye on in the coming months and seeing what kind of direction they plan on evolving the game into.
Yeah, so I think it's one to watch probably in the next few months, but in its current state, I would probably hesitate to recommend it, unfortunately. Do you guys have any final thoughts?
But actually, one thing before I do forget. When you do make a sequel, Ivory Tower, please can you put options to change the display size in The Crew? Because personally, I find it quite irritating because my TV is a bit of an odd shape. So some of the text on the very side and the very bottom of the borders, it gets clipped out by my TV screen, so I can't quite see what it is. It's like during the aerobatics trials. I can't quite see how many roles the game wants me to do without having to do them. So please check display option sizes for the next game, please, Ivory Tower.
Well, there we go. On that note, then, I think that's it for this team chat on The Crew 2. Do let us know your thoughts on the game in the comments below. You can also check out our full review on the website, which will hopefully be up by the time this video goes live. That's it from all of us, though. Bye for now.